Welcome to the greatest show on Earth, the wildebeest migration, one of the most spectacular sights on the African plains. It looks like chaos, but the migration is shaped by some extraordinary behavior. We'll show you wildebeest as you've never seen them before. They're the most successful large animal on the Serengeti. Their numbers are phenomenal, but how do they achieve them? Wildebeest spend their lives on the move, endlessly commuting across the vast plains of the Serengeti. In a lifetime of traveling, a wildebeest might cover 30,000 kilometers. They're on a permanent quest for this: rain and the fresh green grass that it brings. But the African plains are always changing, and the rains are unpredictable. Just how the wildebeest track the weather is still a mystery. But by following the rains, they can find enough food to survive. And this strategy is so successful that their numbers exceed those of any other antelope. Herd upon herd, they form a super herd of 1.25 million individuals. Each animal in the super herd is following its own instincts to survive. And traveling in huge numbers is itself very advantageous. But there's no organization or hierarchy. There are no leaders. Any animal could start moving and thousands might follow. Since they must cover enormous distances, it's important for wildebeest to travel as economically as possible. Their high forequarters and low hindquarters give them a rocking gait that's a very efficient way of covering long distances. They travel from pasture to pasture in a super herd that snakes its way across the savannah in characteristic long lines. Wildebeest also prefer to travel bumper to bumper. Open grasslands are full of predators, and, as in crossing a minefield, this is the safest way to travel. Living in a super herd can protect wildebeest against lions in other ways, too. Lions live in small family groups. Their cubs can't travel very far, so the adults can't either. That means they can't follow the super herd as it migrates. Instead, they must remain in their territories and wait for a massive conveyor belt of meals to come within range. Wildebeest traveling through these areas need to be prepared, and they use different tactics in different places. They must be particularly careful when feeding in long grass. Here, the wildebeest abandon their long marching lines and bunch together, each animal trying to get as much food as possible, but no one wanting to push to the front. It's a selfish strategy, and it works. Huddling together in the middle of the herd means you're less likely to get caught. And because no one wants to step out into the open, animals line up with almost military precision into these extraordinary feeding fronts. But there are also disadvantages to feeding in a super herd. Wildebeest feel safer when they're crowded together, more relaxed. They're less wary, and this makes it easier for lions to creep up on big herds. This is crucial for lions. They must get close. The lioness has had to work hard for this victory. The majority of any lion's hunts are failures. On a large scale, the selfish strategy of bunching together serves wildebeest very well. So well, in fact, that the super herd's numbers are not controlled by lions or any other predator. The biggest killer of wildebeest is something else, something that thrives on closely packed animals. Disease. 100 years ago, rinderpest arrived in Africa. It came from imported cattle and spread like wildfire through the super herd. In 2 years, 95% of them were dead. It took 60 years for the disease to subside. But then, in just 10 years, the super herd's number rose again to 1.25 million. But living in such densities and keeping perpetually on the move does bring problems. Courtship becomes very difficult. In fact, even with thousands of females to choose from, a male must be very determined to win a mate. By the end of the rainy season, the wildebeest are well fed and in peak condition. It's the best time for females to breed, and over the space of 3 weeks, they all become sexually receptive. But the migration is still on the move. If you live in the fast lane, you have to learn how to speed date. Although the super herd must be the largest singles party on Earth, with thousands of females to choose from, there are also thousands of other males to compete with. To improve their chances, males set up small territories. Then they bellow, grunt, and prance about in their distinctive rocking canter, frantic to catch a female's eye. The problem is, each female comes into season for only 1 day, and the males are desperate to mate with as many as possible. Eventually, the super herd breaks up into a patchwork of small groups, each defended by a bull. Some bulls will even allow adolescent males in their group. They act like decoy ducks to attract females. A male has to work hard to keep these females to himself, for while his back is turned, other males will move into his harem. And when this happens, there'll be a fight. Brute force is one way for a male to keep females, but a few have discovered a more relaxing way to do it. On hot days, everyone wants shade. Bulls with a tree in their territory become very popular. Wildebeest, clever enough to find a tree, are never short of admirers. Whatever their strategy, the bulls have to move fast if they're to pass on their genes. The super herd will soon be on the move again. The vast, rich grasslands of the Serengeti are bustling with all sorts of life. As the migration continues, the super herd mows its way across another new pasture. With their broad muzzles, flexible lips, and wide row of incisor teeth, wildebeest make formidable lawn mowers. They're such efficient cutters of grass that the super herd can quickly turn knee-high pasture into a trimmed lawn. But this crew cut doesn't suit everyone. Topi have mouths that are adapted to feeding on longer grasses. They find it hard to nibble the short turf left behind by the wildebeest. In fact, if the super herd trims the grass to just 2 centimeters high, it halves the amount of food a topi can reach. By cropping the pasture in the way they do, wildebeest affect the fortunes of many other grazers. Some grazers are helped by this extreme form of landscaping. Thompson's gazelles are among them. They prefer short grass, and by tagging along behind the super herd, they can find plenty of it. They are more delicate eaters, with small mouths that can pick out tender shoots missed by the wildebeest. And they're not the only ones to benefit from the wildebeest's way of grazing. Each wildebeest eats 4 kilograms of grass a day. That means the super herd leaves behind it 420 tons of dung every day. It's an immense windfall for dung beetles, and they home in on it from all over the savannah. Within hours, they've rolled the dung into balls and buried it. Each ball provides their young with food and shelter, but it also fertilizes the pasture for next year's grass. In fact, the Serengeti landscape is in a constant cycle of change. It's shaped and reshaped by all sorts of forces from season to season, year to year. Some of these changes are natural, others are not. Fires look devastating, but many are deliberately started by the people who live on the savannas to encourage new grass for their cattle. But these fires also damage trees. There are other dangers too that threaten a tree growing on the savanna. Elephants are also landscapers. Their technique is very different. Hungry elephants trying to reach the best leaves on the topmost branches can easily destroy mature trees and eventually whole woodlands. The damage they do has had a major impact on the savanna. Wildebeest, too, will damage trees. The bulls like to batter young trees with their horns, using them like punch bags to vent their aggression. So, as the superherd bulldozes its way across the savannah, woodlands are often badly damaged. In fact, 30 years ago, when the superherd had recovered from Wildebeest, the Serengeti woodlands were transformed. The trees that are most damaged are those around the fringes of woodland patches, and when they fall, they are replaced by grass, so the pasture expands still further. Every year, the superherd moves across the Serengeti, but it never follows exactly the same route. There is one particular place, though, to which they always return. At roughly the same time each year, the wildebeest gather on a particular pasture in the southeastern Serengeti. Its volcanic soil gives this grass very high levels of protein, calcium, and phosphorus. It's just what the females need to produce rich milk to feed their calves. Since rutting in the superherd was completed within 3 weeks, calving too happens all together in a similar short period. But giving birth on these open grasslands means that the mothers and calves are very exposed. Mothers in labour are especially vulnerable. There are predators everywhere. But calving at the same time is in itself a protection. Up to 24,000 calves are born a day, and any one calf arriving in the middle of all this is therefore much less likely to be singled out. If a predator does move in, females have a number of ways of getting out of danger. Mothers in labour can stop their contractions in an instant and move off with the herd. Females also tend to wait until morning to give birth. Being born at that time gives calves a chance to gain strength before nightfall, when predators are more active and harder to spot. But it's still a race against time. Jackals are no threat to adult wildebeest, but they can kill calves. They know what they're looking for. Newborn calves must stand up as quickly as possible. Even if a calf is slow to find its feet, its mother will put up a good fight if the jackal moves in. Wildebeest calves instinctively stand up as soon as they can. Some can be on their feet just 3 minutes after birth. Once it's up, the jackal has lost its chance. And the calf is rewarded with milk. Jackals scavenge where they can. If they can't steal a calf, an afterbirth will do instead. These calves need to do everything quickly. They must bond with their mothers before the herd moves on. In a super herd of over 1 million, knowing who to follow is essential for survival. No other antelope breeds in this synchronized way. It's a super herd strategy that gives its members a huge advantage. But there are other times when the wildebeest instinct to keep in step is dangerous. Being part of a super herd can also be disastrous. The journey to new pastures is inevitably beset with dangers. In some places, sheer density can be fatal. Nowhere is this more so than at river crossings. Swimming across these fast-flowing waters is desperately difficult, but the super herd must do so to reach new pastures. At first, the wildebeest crowd the bank in search of a place to cross. In some places, the shape of the land funnels the wildebeest down to the water. These are crossing points which may have been used by the super herd for generations. As the wildebeest gather on the banks, the crush becomes intense, and the animals are torn between fear and the need to cross. Eventually, one animal takes the plunge, and the entire herd follows it. But the current is much stronger than it looks. Some animals are swept past the only easy landing place. They'll have to scramble out where they can. These are trapped. There is no escape here. While some are trying to clamber up walls of mud, others behind are still plunging into the river. The super herd is unstoppable. Some wildebeest are forced under the water in the crush. Others are grabbed by crocodiles. At last, some find a narrow gap in the bank. But as hundreds of wildebeest try to squeeze into this narrow exit, another deadly bottleneck forms. Membership of the super herd has a high price. Some animals are exhausted. They give up and turn back. But the super herd as a whole doesn't retreat. The wildebeest instinct to stay together forces them to keep moving forward. At last, with intense pressure mounting from behind, some of the herd managed to get up the bank. This single crossing has cost the lives of nearly 400 individuals. The wildebeest will continue to cross like this for days, even weeks. Compared to the hundreds of thousands of wildebeest that get through, these casualties are tiny. This is the ultimate power of the super herd. Whatever the dangers, its sheer mass will always prevail. And it's not just one strategy that makes wildebeest so successful, it's everything they do. Ultimately, it's the sheer numbers that enables the super herd to triumph over the hazards of life on the savannas.